Thank you, Madam Clerk. Many of you may have noticed on the agenda that we had a hot seat. And I purposely went and passed him up. Because as a hot seat, when you come in, you don't always know what you're going to be asked to do. And today, I was very fortunate, very blessed to have a seasoned Toastmaster as our hot seat, because it's only the seasoned Toastmasters that we call on to give us an impromptu speech at the spur of a moment. Mr. Jack Kantola. Our next speaker, he's been a fan of Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, since it was first published. In his book, Covey implores us to begin with the end in mind. Today, Jack will tell us about another way this approach is important for all of us. Speaking for 5 to 7 minutes, the title of his talk is Begin with the End in Mind. Please help me welcome Mr. Jack Kantola.
On October 29th of this year, I got a phone call from Dory in Minneapolis. She said, Jim has fallen and he's in the hospital. Can you go and figure out what's going on? And I went to the hospital. My friend Jim Gordon had fallen in his bathroom that morning and hit his head. And it's caused a brain bleed. Brain was bleeding in 3 different places. I spent the next week with him in the hospital, watching him slowly come to an end. He lasted just about 1 week. Now, Jim was 90 years old, an age that Bob can relate to very well. And he was in good health. We had breakfast every Friday morning. We would go to Delia's for lunch. We'd go to church together on Sundays, and then after church we did our third service at Baker's on Haruka and Grand Avenue. And he was leading a very, very happy and contented life until that one morning. Now, you wouldn't think, well, that's going to happen to any of us, but in this situation, Jim's wife Shirley has dementia. They were living by themselves at home, and when he fell, she did not know what to do. A neighbor eventually found them, called 911, and got Jim to the hospital. And at the hospital on that Tuesday night, Jim was fairly coherent. But as the days went on, he slowly faded away. Now, a couple of things associated with this. One was no relatives in town. Jim married Shirley when he was about 40 years old. Shirley had 3 boys, 2 of which have passed. And so he was the stepfather of the boys, but never formally adopted them. So the issue was, going into the hospital, what kind of treatment can we do? Where is the health care directive? Shirley's son, Mark, lived in Minneapolis. And he made quickly as he could, made arrangements to come out here. I was able to determine who Jim's lawyer was, who his attorney was, before Jim had faded to the point where he couldn't communicate. I called the attorney and he said he had a healthcare directive and that appointed Shirley's youngest son, John, as the executor. John passed away about 4 years ago. So I was in the hospital trying to deal with this situation and not being able to make any decisions. And having the typical kind of thing of saying, the nurse telling the doctor, oh, he's just a friend. So you got to limit what you tell him. To their credit, they told me much more than they probably should have. The other thing was that there were we had no idea what Jim wanted for his funeral. And so you have a situation where Jim's relatives, the closest relatives, were in the high desert. They had a perception in terms of what Jim wanted for his funeral. Shirley and his family, the family that grew up, had a perception for what he wanted in his funeral, and those perceptions didn't match. And what does that cause? A little bit of family strife. So there were issues here that should have been taken care of. Jim came to that big end, E-N-D, in capital letters that we're all going to come to, unprepared. Now you say, okay, he was 90 years old. Yeah, sure, he should have had things in mind when he was 90 years old. When you get to that point, I don't know whether you do or not, but when we get to that point, we should have things in order and taken care of. But it's not just at 90 that things can happen. A year ago on October 7th, we got a call from my son-in-law, Todd. My daughter had a seizure, and they were taking her to Stanford Hospital, where the diagnosis was that she had glioblastoma multiforme stage 4. Now, if you ever want to scare yourself, go on the internet and Google that. The survival rate for glioblastoma multiforme stage 4 is 5%. Now, my daughter is 43 years old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. Now, they, to their credit, had a lot of things going for them. They bought life insurance last summer. But they had to go through the process of creating a health care directive, a will, who's going to take care of the kids if they both are gone. Those kinds of decisions that are. So when I talk about Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind in this situation, I'm talking about that end that we're all going to arrive at some point in time. That end that none of us want to think about. That none of us want to spend time worrying about. But it's going to happen. And so I would encourage you, number one, get a health care directive right now. Get a living trust right now. Have those things in place and in order. Those are incredibly important, but so is having some sort of a plan for your funeral. How do you want your remains taken care of? And then finally, if Shirley and Jim had got into assisted living even a year ago, the process would have gone so much more smoothly. Right now, her son has been here for a month. They have live-in assistance coming in during the day right now, and Shirley is absolutely and totally ticked off. She is being so difficult to deal with her dementia. And to make that transition to a new location is going to be incredibly difficult. So listen to what Stephen Covey says. We all need to begin with that end in mind, to keep the worry from our survivors and our relatives. And